I don't think I've made a single payment on those student loans since I've had them.
Great, you don't feel responsible to pay back money you borrow?
It's not that, I guess.
Well, yes. Go on.
I don't have the degree for it.
Yeah, but you borrowed it. I don't have the degree. I'm paying on mine.
I know I borrowed it, but it's not that I don't plan on paying it back.
It's been over
He
a decade.
doesn't.
I know.
$20,576.
Again, like I said, I've been focused on just maintaining my day-to-day. So there's things...
But you're not.
That's why I'm been focused on it and not doing anything else, really.
But you're not maintaining your day-to-day. You're moving your car payments to the end of your car payment. You're allowing that 20% interest to accrue. Mind you, again, when I talked about accruing money in your retirement, the best is a 10% average. You're losing more than double that with your car loan.
Yeah, he absolutely never had any plan to pay this back. And he seems to think that if he doesn't pay back his student loans, that they just kind of mysteriously go away. To be clear, student loans essentially never go away, not even if you declare bankruptcy. And the entire time you are ignoring the problem and hoping it isn't there, you are accruing interest, which will affect your life later.
I already wasn't planning on paying the student loans. I'm going to just give it to you straight right here. I was never planning on giving it back from the moment that I signed up for it. I'm triple not paying it now. I'm triple not paying it now. Are y'all crazy? Mind you, I'm not even supposed to be on this app. I quit this app, but I'm back now because shit has gotten out of hand. You're taking money out of people's checks to fund a schminicide? A schminicide? And you want me to take money from my own life, from thine own life, to fund a schminicide? When we got homeless people in tent cities, think of the darkness and depravity of that phrase. Cities of tents. And you want to send the tent city money over to the funding the schminicide? Kiss my ass. I'm not doing it.
Look, I totally get not wanting to support wars and violence, especially when we have a lot of domestic issues here we should also be concerned about. But she's definitely starting from I'm not paying it and then working backwards towards a justification as to why she thinks morally that she should not have to. Because she started off saying, just to be clear, I'm not paying them off and I was never planning to. And then she's saying, but now I'm especially not doing it. So, I mean, it was never going to happen. And that's not going to work any more than saying, oh, well, I have a moral issue with banks or with car notes, and therefore I'm not going to pay my mortgage or my car note, and maybe they'll just leave me alone. They are coming after you.
I'm not paying my student loans. The government keeps threatening all these things they're going to do to people if they don't pay their student loans. I don't think they realize we don't care. We don't have enough to care. We don't care about credit scores anymore.
Yeah, we do.
We don't care.
Yes, we do.
If you siphon our paychecks, we're just going to quit and move on to the next company because that company was...
We absolutely care if our paychecks are siphoned, right? Like, I don't want my paycheck siphoned. I don't think you want your paycheck siphoned. We care, just to be clear.
Was probably going to fire us anyway. People don't stay at jobs like they used to. People aren't locked in to a job they have to stay at for 35 years because they're getting a pension and great benefits. Those things don't happen anymore.
That's true.
So if you threaten to siphon people's paychecks, they're just going to quit and go to another company because that company was probably going to go bankrupt anyway and fire everybody in the next couple months.
Now, it is true that companies absolutely do not value loyalty like they used to. But if your pay and wages are garnished at one job, switching jobs is not going to make them less garnished. They're still going to be garnished at the next one. It just might take a couple of cycles for them to catch up with you. That's like saying if you commit a crime in Kansas, then every time the police find out where you live, you can just move to another state. Like, yeah, I guess technically you could do that, but there's no world in which that works out well for you in the long term.
This is going to be so much work for the government to siphon paychecks, and it's not going to get them enough money. They're going to end up losing money because they're going to have to hire thousands of people to try and get this money from people that don't have it. They're gonna end up spending more money than they get in the long run.
Now, I'm sympathetic to people that don't have it and don't have a way to get it anytime soon. They should absolutely get some kind of deference or forgiveness or something like that. If you're not making enough to pay off your student loans, they should not be a burden for the rest of your life. But just to be clear, our government runs a deficit of $2 trillion per year. They are not concerned about spending more money than they're taking in. They have been doing it since the 90s. They will absolutely come after you. They will spend millions of dollars on thousands of employees to come after your $1,200 overpayment. It's just how they work.
So these empty threats that they're giving us, they aren't
empty.
scaring us. If the government's watching, it doesn't scare us. We don't have enough.
She keeps speaking as if everyone is on her side, like behind her cheering you. Yeah, but like, I don't want the government coming after my wages and garnishing them. I don't want my credit score impacted. I don't want my ability to buy a house or cars or get personal loans in the future impacted. You know, things like housing that are really important and tied to your credit score. These are not empty threats. If you have an income of any kind, then there is something that the government can come after and garnish. There is something they can take away from you. It is far, far better to have that done on your terms where you're paying them than on their terms where they're just taking it. Because I guarantee their terms are worse than your terms.
I've decided that I'm never going to pay back my student loans, and this is how I'm going to finesse them. I'm currently getting a doctoral degree,
statement.
and I'll be milking those student loan refund checks throughout the process, while, of course, doing the work authentically. However, upon graduation in about 2.5 years, I'm going to continue to go to college for the rest of my life. This isn't a new secret. However, I'm going to pay out of pocket 2 classes a semester, 6 credits in a degree-seeking program, at least 2 semesters a year. That'll be about $2,000 max, including books. And then I'll get a lifetime learner's credit of $1,000 on my tax return. So my net payment is only $1,000, and I will continue to get associate's degrees and just, you know, keep learning.
I'm pretty sure this is a joke, but just in case it isn't, the Big Beautiful Bill now caps the amount of money that you can take out. I think it caps it at like $28,500 when it was $138,000 for like undergrad degrees, and then graduate degrees have different amounts. But if you keep doing this, eventually the school is going to cut you off because you are no longer making the money, because the private student loan companies are going to stop doing it, and the government will not fund that forever. Eventually, your loans will come due again. And also, do you want to be forced to keep going to school when you're like 50 years old? You're going to have nothing. You're going to have no money, no career, no prospects, no housing. This would not work.
And the bottom of my casket will have a file cabinet for all these student loans to rest in heavenly peace. That's how much I owe in student loans. How much money I owe in student
$100,000. Dang. 5% interest rate too. That's rough.
loans. Now let me provide you with some additional information, since I know that this video is going to go viral because people are cruel and a lot of people are going to be ready to attack me in the comments and judge me and do whatever they got to do to feel good about themselves. I am a proud 25-year-old with over $100,000 in student loan debt. I went to school. I got a free associate degree through the early college program. I then furthered my education and got...
You got a free associate's degree and she still got $100,000 in student loan debt? What was she spending the money on? You only need 2 more years at $50,000 a year? That's so much. There were some terrible financial decisions here.
2 additional degrees. I have a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship with a minor in management, and I have a master's degree in organizational leadership.
Okay, so she got 2 degrees, but honestly, those are not terrible degrees to have if you have a lot of student loans you need to pay off. Yeah, they're not going to make you rich, but a business degree is absolutely enough to at least pay off that $100,000 in a fairly reasonable time, 10 or 15 years. But I think where she went wrong is getting the 2 degrees. She got a free associate's, and then she can get a good business degree in 2 years, cost her maybe, I don't know, $10,000 to $20,000, get a good job, work it up, pay off that first student loan as fast as you can, and then pay for that second one either in cash or find a rate that's so low that it makes sense for you to hold it on for, you know, the 10-year length of the loan. Not only will you be in less debt overall, but also you might find a job in which your employer is willing to pay for your second degree. A lot of employers do that, and then they'll usually say, for however much we pay, you have to work X number of years at this company. It's a good deal for everyone. They get an employee with more qualifications, and you get a free education.
But one thing America doesn't know about me is that I have 1 additional degree that's not on file and it's not in the records anywhere, and that's a law degree. At any given point, I'm prepared to take the stand and explain why I cannot afford to pay a dime on them student loans.
She seems serious too.
Baby, you ain't never seen a sharp, undegreed attorney like me ever in your life.
Honestly, don't think that's going to work, but you know, if you want to give it a shot, that's on you. And if it does, more power to you.
Last night I had to log into my student loan account to print out the paperwork to have my taxes done today. So I got to get a glimpse of my student loan balance for the first time in, I don't know, presumably a year. I honestly don't remember knowing what I owed still.
Do people not check this obsessively? I constantly am looking at every aspect of my personal finance to make sure that I'm staying on top of it. Because, I mean, money will go vanishing into the woodwork if you don't keep on a budget. I mean, maybe it's just me. Obviously, I have this channel, so presumably I'm a finance nut. But this is just crazy to me that someone could go a whole year without looking to see how much, like, debt they owe and the amount that's coming out of their account and how much more they owe and whether they're going to make the minimum payments on time, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that stresses me out, and I'm not her.
Now, for a point of reference, I graduated in 2011. Okay, so I've been making student loan payments for almost 14 years. I actually did the math. It was about 165 monthly student loan payments that I've made so far. Okay. Now, I went to pharmacy school. I'm a pharmacist. That's a doctorate degree. It took 6 years. I went to a private school, not because I wanted to, but at the time, there were only 6 schools in the state of Pennsylvania with a pharmacy program. 2 of them were state schools, 4 of them were private. Chose the school I chose because they gave me a $12,000 a year academic scholarship for the first 4 years. So I got $48,000 worth of academic scholarship. So that's why I chose that.
It's also, this isn't terrible. I mean, I assume she's got some large 6-figure amount in student loan debt, but pharmacists make a pretty good amount, I think. I looked it up, and I'm not saying it's not a pain to pay back. Absolutely, anytime you have to pay back a debt or a loan that's got interest on it, it kind of sucks. People don't like giving away their money to like banks or the government or whatever, but pharmacists make $120,000 to $150,000, even if it is a large student loan payment, which I imagine it is, probably in the $100,000 to $150,000 range. On that salary, especially if you've got a spouse, that is something you could pay back reasonably without it crippling your life like some of the people who have loans.
So my education, even with the scholarship, costs still like $250,000 roughly. Now I'm fortunate my parents paid for a really good chunk of that, over $100,000. I don't remember the exact numbers honestly of how it all washed out, but I do know when I got my first student loan bill in the mail, well, I almost brick, but my balance was like right around $125,000.
Okay, that is a lot. $125,000 is a huge amount of money. But relative to the amount of money that a pharmacist make, again, $120,000 to $150,000, some of the higher paid ones can make up to like $200,000 depending on where you work. That's not terrible. It is doable. It's not fun. It's not pretty. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't suck to pay back that amount of money. But it's not like she's making $50,000 or $60,000 with $100,000 or $150,000 to pay back, and like such that she would reasonably never be able to. This is something she could pay back if she budgeted and made it a priority.
Okay, 165 monthly payments on $125,000. How much do you think I still owe?
It's gonna be so much.
$78,000.
I assume she was making whatever the absolute minimum payment that they required was. And let me tell you, minimum payments are absolutely a trap. And not only are they a trap, but the companies that are giving out these loans, they're never going to tell you that you can save X amount of money on interest by making bigger payments, because of course they're not. That's the profit that they're taking. They know whatever that they just set you up with initially, you'll just stick with for however long the loan lasts and never ask any questions. And don't get me wrong, that is very scummy. But if it's going to impact you, then you've got to be on top of your payments and use a calculator to see how much faster you can pay it off. You have to know how long the loan's going to be, how much you're going to pay every month, what you're paying in your principal, what you're paying in your interest. Now, obviously, the system is very often predatory, but that doesn't mean it's not going to impact you if you don't pay your loans and stay on top of this.
What's something really important that you should have been taught in school, but you weren't?
And just everything having to do with finances.
I would know. I'm a doctor. I went to school for a long time, and I'm going to show you how quickly interest adds up. Here's a quick example of someone starting to pay a $50,000 loan their first year out from school. Let's say they're paying $200 a month for the whole year. So here's all those payments. So in July, their loan is $50,000. Then in August, it's $50,000. Plus the new interest minus their last month payment. So it's that much. And then we'll show the rest of the year. And the total loans they paid that year are they paid a total of $2,400, but their total loan amount went up by almost $100.
Yeah, it's bad if you don't know what you're doing and you're only making payments, essentially making payments that are so low, your minimum payments, that you're only covering the interest. You're not actually hitting the principal amount of the loan. You should essentially never be making whatever the minimum payment that the company offers you, because they're going to pick the payment that takes you the longest and earns them the most interest. And I assume that's what happened with the pharmacist that we looked at earlier. Probably she was making minimum payments that covered the interest and then just barely a little bit of principal, so that after 14 years, she had only paid off $50,000 of her $125,000 loan over the course of 165 payments, which I assume she was paying a pretty penny every month. So we've seen people saying that they can't or won't pay back their student loan interest. And not only have we seen a lot of people saying that, but there are even more people actually doing that. Some of them because they genuinely cannot afford it, and some because they believe that by ignoring it, that it will go away or not impact their life. But let me tell you, this is having very real, very negative consequences on people's lives. Student borrowers' credit scores are taking a hit. Here's why it matters. The Trump administration's resumption of the student loan payments earlier this month is taking a toll on many borrowers' credit scores. Credit scores dropped by more than 100 points for 2.2 million delinquent student loan borrowers from January through March of 2025, according to recent data from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. For its report, the Fed looked at the borrower delinquency rate based on shares of student loan borrowers with at least one student loan payment reported as past due or in default. Another 1 million borrowers experienced credit score drops of at least 150 points for the first 3 months of 2025. That's huge. That's going from having an outstanding credit score to a good one, or going from a good one to a terrible one. A low credit score makes securing future loans both more difficult and more costly, pushing milestones like buying a home or saving for retirement further out of reach. It can even impact one's employment prospects, and this is true if you work in the financial industry. Often they want to see your credit history and your ability to pay back debts, which kind of makes sense. They're not going to let you manage other people's finances if you're unable to manage your own. The key risk is that this could reduce credit limits and higher interest rates for new loans, which could reduce delinquent borrowers' access to credit, which would then be used for other areas of spending such as cars and mortgages, Grace Zwemmer, associate economist at Oxford Economics, told CBS Money Watch. Some 2.4 million of the newly delinquent borrowers previously had credit scores above 620, which are considered good and would have been able to qualify them for new loans, car loans, mortgages, and credit cards before the delinquencies were reported, Fed researchers said. Quote, these borrowers saw substantial declines in their credit standing in the first quarter and will now face steeper borrowing costs or denial for new credit, Fed researchers said in the report. So please do not let this be you. And I get it. It sucks. I also have student loans, and I know a lot of people don't have the money to pay them off. But ignoring the problem by refusing to pay it will only make it worse. It's like if you're having a medical issue, ignoring it and seeing if it goes away is almost never a good idea, because you know it's only going to get worse with time if it's unaddressed.
I owe $103,000 in student loan debts. I think the government took advantage of me. I didn't know any better. I was a first-generation graduate, grew up in a small town, poor town, used to shop at the dollar store for clothes. I didn't understand the ramifications of borrowing money from the government and had no one to explain it to me. Reading a document wasn't enough because I didn't make that connection that I needed of how serious it was, borrowing money from the government.
And this is basically the best argument I've heard for student loan forgiveness, or at the very least, student loan interest payment forgiveness. Teenagers are dumb. Of course they are. Of course they're going to take out the loans to go to college. One, that's what everyone has told them that they're supposed to do. Two, all of their friends are going to college. And three, they believe that they need a college degree in order to get a good education and have a good life making money at a job they're passionate about. But there's no 18-year-old that understands the ramifications of taking out, in her case, $103,000. When you're that age, you just don't have that reference point for how much money that is. And that sucks. It's borderline tricking them into taking out money that they're going to have to pay off for the next 30 years. At the age of 18, a 50-year-old is paying off decisions they made when they were 18? That doesn't seem fair to me.
I want to tell you about my student loans because I feel like it's very relevant in this situation. I haven't paid my student loans in a couple of years, I believe, and the reason I stopped paying is because I simply had no money to. It was either rent, food, cat food for my pets, medications, or pay my student loans. They were asking like $250 to $300 a month, and
that's a lot of money.
I had to make a choice. I wasn't going to be homeless paying my student loans off. So I stopped paying them, but I still kept in contact. I still kept communicating with them and explaining to them my situation. And they listened, and they were really nice and really friendly. But they talked about how much I could pay back. And eventually we agreed on a number. And I remember it was something like maybe like $100 or something. I remember telling them I had so much.
Yeah, this is a good solution. He talks about how they came to an agreement on how much he was going to have to pay back. And while it did turn out to be a bit of a nightmare to get that set up, at least she got that. And this was the correct way to go about it. She didn't have the money, so she talked to the company and she agreed on a price for what it was that she was able to pay. This is probably not a great long-term solution because most likely your interest payments are going to remain the same and all you're doing is making smaller payments. And then we get back to the issue with the pharmacist where 15 years later, you've only paid off like 2/3 of your loan. But for a short time, if you're in a season where you really just need the money for something else, absolutely, this is a great thing to do.
Just don't pay your loans back. You don't owe anybody anything anyway. You see, the money that you've taken out as a loan is yours. You created it. If people understood exactly how money works.
You did not create the money that you take out in a loan. What?
You'd understand that you don't owe anybody any money. Like, let me ask you this question.
If you take it from the
When
bank,
you take out a loan from the bank, where does that money come from?
From the bank.
You see, we're sold this idea that when you take a loan out from the bank, the bank is somehow giving you something that they already own.
They are. That's what a loan is.
And therefore you have to give it them back.
Yeah, legally.
But the thing is, when you take out a loan, that money didn't exist until you signed that piece of paper.
That's
and
not
gave
true.
the order to the bank to create that money.
That's not at all true. That's not even close to true. Banks do not create money. When they give you a loan, they take the loan from their balance sheet. They take the amount from their balance sheet and they loan it to you at an interest rate, like 3 to 7%, depending on what it is. They do not create that money. At a very high level, the Federal Reserve will buy treasury bonds, and then the payment for those treasury bonds gets deposited in special accounts at commercial banks. The banks then take that money and they loan it out to you with interest, and the interest is just the fee you're giving to them for their service of loaning you such a large amount of money at once. The money absolutely existed before the loan and will continue to exist after the loan, and yes, it was the bank's money. It did not appear out of thin air. Otherwise, every loan would just have money appearing, and inflation would be just through the roof.
You created the money. Your signature created the money. You are the backing for the loan.
You are not the backing for the... no, you're not the backing for the loan. Usually the loan gets you something, a car, a house, something else. And in that case, that is the backing for the loan. If you can't make the payments on it, the car's repossessed or the house is foreclosed on and then sold at auction. You can get unsecured loans, but they're more difficult and you usually have to have a pretty good credit history for that.
And when you understand that you don't owe the bank anything because it didn't exist until you created it.
True.
Why do you have to pay it back?
Because they gave it to you.
So they then threaten you with this idea, well, if you don't pay it back, you might get a CCJ and it might go on your credit report, right? Okay. And
then you lose the ability to borrow money, which, to be clear, you need the ability to borrow money. Correction, you don't need the ability to borrow money, but life is a lot simpler if you have the ability to borrow money via credit scores and such.
You see, this is the problem. We're told that debt is a good thing to have, but not told what debt should be used for. Debt should be used to buy assets, because once you've got assets that create money themselves, you then don't care about your credit report, because banks will just throw money at you anyway. So don't put your debts back.
Okay, there's like the tiniest kernel of truth to what he's saying. When you have a lot of assets, you don't really need to borrow money. That's true. If you are worth $10 or $20 million, probably you don't need to borrow money because, like, why would you? You just have the money. No need to mess with banks. You can just pay it yourself. But basically, up until that point, you have to take out loans and you have to pay them back. Money is not randomly created. You think every time someone buys a house that the amount for the house is just appears out of thin air? That would mean that hundreds of billions of dollars every month were just created out of nowhere. That's not how money creation works. Also, to be clear, you can take it out and then not pay it back because it's not real. That's just fraud. If you borrow money that you never intend to pay back, that is illegal, and the banks will come after you for that. Do not take this advice. This is not how anything works, and have a great day.